A secret island vacation changes everything when Jungkook reveals a life-changing surprise that leaves Jimin speechless. The ring slipped from Jungkook's trembling fingers and bounced across the edge of the wooden pier. No, Jimin lunged forward instinctively. The silver band spun once beneath the moonlight, balanced on the wet edge of the dock and then stopped. For one terrifying second, neither of them breathed. The ocean roared beneath them. Waves crashed against the rocks below the secluded island resort, sending salty mist into the night air. Jungkook froze. Jimin's hand hovered inches from the ring. The entire world seemed suspended in silence. Then Jimin carefully grabbed it before it could fall into the darkness. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. "What is this?" he whispered. Jungkook's eyes widened. Panic flashed across his face. Not because the ring had almost fallen into the sea. Because Jimin had found it too soon. The surprise was ruined. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. The moon hung low above the ocean horizon, painting silver trails across the water. Palm trees swayed gently behind them. The scent of salt, tropical flowers, and warm summer air surrounded the empty beach. This island had been supposed to be their escape. A secret vacation. No schedules. No cameras. No expectations. Just two people trying to breathe. Trying to remember who they were when the world wasn't watching. Yet somehow even here fate had other plans. Jimin slowly turned the ring over in his palm. His chest tightened. He looked up. Jungkook. The younger man immediately looked away. That reaction alone told Jimin everything. And yet it also told him nothing. Because Jungkook looked terrified. Not happy. Not relieved. Terrified. Jimin knew that expression. He had seen it before. Years ago. Before major performances. Before life-changing decisions. Before moments that could alter everything. The expression of someone standing on the edge of a cliff. Someone afraid to jump. "You were hiding this?" Jimin asked softly. Jungkook swallowed. His throat felt dry. "I wasn't supposed to lose it." "That doesn't answer my question." A nervous laugh escaped Jungkook. The sound carried no humor. Only fear. "Can we go back to the villa?" The answer surprised Jimin. If the ring meant what he suspected, why wasn't Jungkook smiling? Why wasn't he saying anything? Why did he look like someone carrying an unbearable weight? Jimin followed him silently. The two men walked back across the quiet beach. Soft white sand shifted beneath their feet. Above them, stars covered the sky like scattered diamonds. The island was beautiful. Almost unreal. Yet tension followed them like a shadow. Inside the private villa overlooking the ocean, neither of them immediately sat down. Jungkook paced. Back and forth. Back and forth. A habit he always had whenever anxiety consumed him. Jimin watched quietly. Studying him. Waiting. Finally Jungkook stopped. The room fell silent. The sound of distant waves drifted through the open windows. "Do you remember," Jungkook suddenly asked, "the first time we got lost together?" Jimin blinked. The question seemed completely unrelated. Then a small smile appeared. "Of course. We walked in circles for nearly 2 hours. You refused to admit you didn't know where we were." Jungkook laughed softly. A genuine laugh this time. "You kept saying we'd eventually find the right road." And we did. After getting even more lost. The memory warmed the atmosphere slightly. But only slightly. Because beneath Jungkook's smile, something still hurt. Jimin noticed it immediately. "What aren't you telling me?" The question landed heavily. Jungkook looked toward the ocean. Toward the darkness beyond the glass windows. His reflection stared back at him. For a moment he looked exhausted. Not physically. Emotionally. like someone carrying years of invisible weight. "I've been afraid," he admitted quietly. Jimin frowned. "Afraid of what?" "Losing things." The answer came immediately. Too immediately. As if it had lived inside him for years. Jungkook lowered his gaze. "I've spent so much of my life wondering how long happiness lasts." The room grew still. "When people love you," he continued, "you start worrying about the day they stop." Jimin's heart tightened. Jungkook rarely spoke this openly. When he did, every word mattered. "You think I'll leave?" "No." The answer came instantly. Without hesitation. Without doubt. That surprised Jimin even more. "Then what are you afraid of?" Jungkook smiled sadly. "Time." The word barely rose above a whisper. Yet it carried immense weight. "Everything changes," he said. "People grow. Life moves forward. Nothing stays exactly the same." Jimin listened carefully. Because he understood. He knew fame, pressure, distance, uncertainty. They had survived years of all of it. Yet some fears never disappeared completely. Jungkook reached into his pocket. Slowly, carefully. His hand emerged empty. Because the ring was still in Jimin's possession. The sight made him laugh nervously. "Can I have it back?" Jimin looked down at the silver band. Then handed it over. Jungkook held it tightly. For several seconds he simply stared at it. The silence became emotional. Heavy. Meaningful. Then finally he lifted his eyes. Meeting Jimin's gaze directly. "I brought you here because I wanted one memory that belonged only to us." Jimin felt his chest tighten. The sincerity in Jungkook's voice was impossible to ignore. No audience. No headlines. No expectations. Just us. Outside, waves continued breaking against the shore. The island seemed to hold its breath. "So what happens now?" Jimin asked quietly. Jungkook smiled. A real smile. The kind that reached his eyes. The kind Jimin loved most. "Now I stop being afraid." He stepped forward. One step. Then another. Until only inches separated them. Jimin could hear his heartbeat. Fast. Uneven. Human. Jungkook took a deep breath. For years, countless moments had led to this one. Shared laughter. Arguments. Dreams. Sacrifices. Trust. The countless invisible threads that connected two souls over time. The ocean wind drifted through the villa. Moonlight spilled across the wooden floor. And in that moment, the entire world seemed very far away. Jungkook reached for Jimin's hand. His fingers trembled slightly. But his voice remained steady. "I don't know what tomorrow looks like. I don't know what the future will bring. I don't know how life will change." His eyes glistened. "But every version of my future that makes sense has you in it." Jimin felt emotion rise inside him unexpectedly. Warm. Overwhelming. Beautiful. Years of memories flooded through his mind. Every difficult moment. Every victory. Every quiet conversation no one else would ever know about. Every reason they had remained beside each other despite everything. Jungkook slowly opened his hand. The silver ring rested in his palm. Simple. Elegant. Meaningful. Not because of its value. Because of what it represented. A promise. A choice. A future. "I love you," Jungkook said. The words hung in the air. Pure and honest. "I always will." Jimin's vision blurred slightly. Not from sadness. From happiness. The kind that feels almost too large for the human heart. For a moment he couldn't speak. Couldn't move. Couldn't think. All he could do was look at the man standing before him. The man who had become one of the most important parts of his life. The man who was offering him not perfection, but commitment. And somehow that was even more meaningful. A tear slipped down Jimin's cheek. He laughed softly. Do you realize how dramatic you've made this vacation? Jungkook burst into laughter, relief immediately washing across his face. There it is. What? The joke. You always make a joke when you're emotional. Jimin wiped his eyes. Maybe. Definitely. The tension finally broke. The fear. The uncertainty. The anxiety. All of it faded beneath genuine happiness. Jimin took the ring gently, studied it for a moment, then looked back at Jungkook. His answer required no long speech, no dramatic declaration, no complicated explanation. Just honesty. The same honesty that had brought them here. The same honesty that would carry them forward. I love you too. Jungkook closed his eyes briefly. A breath he had apparently been holding for months escaped his lungs. The smile that followed was brighter than the moonlight outside. Brighter than the stars above the island. Brighter than anything else in the world. As dawn slowly approached, they sat together on the villa's terrace overlooking the ocean. The horizon gradually transformed from black to deep blue. Then purple. Then gold. Birds began singing among the palm trees. The island awakened around them. A new day. A new chapter. The secret vacation had reached its end. But something far more important had begun. And as the first sunlight touched the ocean, neither of them felt afraid of the future anymore. Because whatever came next, they would face it together. The surprise had finally been revealed. And it was more beautiful than either of them had imagined. The morning after the confession should have felt peaceful. Instead, it felt like the calm before a storm. Golden sunlight poured across the island, painting the ocean in shades of sapphire and gold. Waves rolled lazily onto the white sand below the villa. Tropical birds sang from the palm trees. Yet Jungkook hadn't slept. Not even for a minute. He stood alone on the balcony, gripping the railing tightly. The ring still felt unreal. The promise. Jimin's answer. Everything. For years he had imagined countless possibilities. Rejection. Awkwardness. Distance. Silence. But never this. Never happiness. Never hearing those words returned. The realization terrified him more than any nightmare ever could. Because now he had something precious enough to lose. The balcony door slid open behind him. Jimin emerged wearing an oversized shirt, his hair still messy from sleep. For several seconds he simply watched Jungkook. Something was wrong. He could tell immediately. The younger man was staring at the ocean, but his eyes weren't truly seeing it. You're thinking again. Jungkook laughed quietly. When have I ever stopped? Fair point. Jimin approached him. Their shoulders touched. The familiar contact usually calmed Jungkook. Today it didn't. Jimin noticed. His smile faded. What happened? Nothing. Liar. Jungkook sighed. I said yes. I noticed. Jimin rolled his eyes. And now you're scared. The direct hit made Jungkook freeze. Jimin knew him too well. Always had. Am I that obvious? Only to me. The answer landed deeper than either expected. For a moment neither spoke. The ocean stretched endlessly before them. Then Jimin quietly asked, What are you afraid of this time? Jungkook looked away. The truth felt embarrassing. Childish. Yet impossible to ignore. What if everything changes? Jimin stared at him. Everything already changed. I know. Then why are you acting like we're standing at the edge of a disaster? Jungkook swallowed. because he didn't know how to explain it. How happiness sometimes frightened him more than sadness. Sadness was familiar, predictable. Happiness demanded trust, faith, hope, and hope was dangerous. Before he could answer, his phone suddenly vibrated. Once, twice, then continuously. The sound shattered the peaceful atmosphere. Jungkook frowned. Nobody was supposed to know where they were. Nobody. He checked the screen. His expression instantly darkened. Jimin noticed immediately. What is it? Jungkook didn't answer. His jaw tightened. Message after message continued arriving. Notifications exploded across the screen. Dozens. Then hundreds. Jimin stepped closer. His own face paled. Because the headlines were already everywhere. Someone had leaked photographs. Secret photographs. Images from the island. Images of them together. Walking along the beach. Holding hands. Looking at each other. Smiling. Private moments. Intimate moments. Moments nobody should have seen. The air suddenly felt colder. Neither moved. Neither spoke. Then another notification appeared. And another. And another. Social media was exploding. News outlets were publishing articles. Speculation spread faster than wildfire. Questions. Accusations. Rumors. The entire internet seemed determined to dissect every detail. Jungkook's pulse began racing. How? The word escaped him. Barely audible. How did they find us? Jimin grabbed his own phone. The answer arrived immediately. A staff member from the resort. Someone had secretly sold information. Sold photographs. Sold privacy. For money. The betrayal felt sickening. Jungkook's hands clenched. Years of experience should have prepared him. But somehow this hurt differently. Because this trip wasn't supposed to belong to the public. It was supposed to belong to them. The villa suddenly felt smaller. The walls felt closer. The ocean no longer looked beautiful. It looked isolating. Like they were trapped on an island while the world judged them from afar. Jimin placed a hand on Jungkook's shoulder. The younger man immediately pulled away. Not from anger. From panic. The movement hurt more than either expected. Jimin's expression changed instantly. A flash of pain crossed his face. Jungkook noticed. Regret hit him immediately. Jimin. It's okay. No, it's not. The silence that followed felt uncomfortable. Dangerous. Emotional. For the first time since the confession, tension appeared between them. Not because they loved each other less. Because fear had entered the room. And fear always complicated everything. Hours later they remained inside the villa. The internet continued exploding. Every refresh revealed new discussions. New theories. New controversies. Jungkook sat on the couch, staring blankly at his phone. Jimin paced nearby. The atmosphere had become unbearable. Finally Jimin stopped. What do you want to do? Jungkook looked up. The question sounded simple. It wasn't. Because the answer carried enormous consequences. I don't know. That's not true. Jungkook's eyes met his. You want honesty. Always. The younger man inhaled deeply. Then exhaled. Slowly. Painfully. I want to run away. The confession hung heavily in the air. Jimin didn't react immediately. He simply listened. I want to disappear. Jungkook continued. I want 1 week where nobody talks about us. His voice cracked slightly. I wanted one memory that belonged only to us. The hurt in his eyes nearly broke Jimin's heart. Because he understood. He understood better than anyone. The constant attention. The scrutiny. The pressure. The feeling of living inside a glass box. For years they had survived it. But survival didn't mean immunity. Sometimes it still hurt. Sometimes it always would. Jimin sat beside him. Close enough that their shoulders touched again. This time Jungkook didn't pull away. You know what I think. Jungkook shook his head. I think you're angry because someone stole our moment. The younger man looked down. Because that was exactly it. Not the rumors. Not the articles. Not the headlines. The theft. Someone had stolen something precious. Something personal. Something irreplaceable. Jimin continued softly. They can publish photos. They can make assumptions. They can tell stories. His voice became firmer. But they can't take away what actually happened. Jungkook listened carefully. They weren't here. Jimin pointed toward the ocean. They didn't hear your voice. They didn't see your face. They didn't feel what I felt. The room fell silent. Emotion shimmered inside every word. That belongs to us. For the first time all day, Jungkook smiled. A small smile. But genuine. And somehow that made all the difference. The sun slowly began setting outside. Orange light flooded the horizon. The island transformed once more. Beautiful. Peaceful. Temporary. Their flight home waited tomorrow. Reality waited tomorrow. Questions waited tomorrow. But tonight remained theirs. As darkness settled over the ocean, they walked together along the shoreline. No security. No cameras. No distractions. Just the sound of waves and the warmth of each other's presence. The sand felt cool beneath their feet. The stars gradually appeared overhead. Jungkook glanced toward Jimin. You know something. What? If I had the chance to do it again. He smiled softly. I'd still choose you. Jimin laughed. The sound carried across the empty beach. And here I thought you'd learned your lesson. Nope. Hopeless. Completely. Their laughter echoed into the night. For a moment the fear disappeared. The noise disappeared. The pressure disappeared. Only the two of them remained. And as they continued walking beneath the stars, side by side, they finally understood something important. The surprise had never been the ring. It had never been the confession. It had never been the vacation. The real surprise was discovering that even when the world became loud, chaotic and cruel, they still found peace whenever they found each other. The storm arrived before they even left the island. Not a storm from the sky. A storm created by the world. The private airport was surrounded by reporters before sunrise. Cameras flashed like lightning. Voices shouted over one another. Questions attacked from every direction. Is the vacation real? Are the rumors true? Why did you hide this? Are you going to explain the photos? The sound was overwhelming. Jungkook stood frozen beside the car, his expression unreadable. For years he had performed in front of thousands. Millions. He had stood under bright lights with confidence. But this was different. A stage had rules. This had none. This was chaos. Jimin stepped out beside him. The crowd immediately became louder. The two exchanged a glance. A single second. A silent conversation. Are you okay? No, but I'm here. That was enough. The car door closed behind them, finally separating them from the noise outside. For several moments neither spoke. Only the sound of the engine filled the silence. Then Jungkook suddenly laughed. A quiet, almost broken laugh. Jimin looked at him. What? I was prepared for everything. For what? For a big moment. Jungkook stared out the window. I imagined my heart racing because of happiness. His fingers touched the ring hidden beneath his sleeve. Not because the whole world was watching. Jimin looked down. The truth hurt because it was real. The most beautiful moment of their lives had collided with the most complicated one. And neither of them knew how to separate the two. When they arrived back home, the situation became even worse. The leaked photos had created endless discussions. Some people supported them. Some questioned them. Some created stories that had nothing to do with reality. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone wanted an explanation. Everyone wanted a piece of something that wasn't theirs. Jungkook entered his apartment late that night. The silence felt strange. After days surrounded by ocean, wind and Jimin's presence, the empty room felt cold. He placed his suitcase down. Then he simply stood there, unable to move. His phone buzzed again. Another message. Another headlines. Another reminder. He ignored it. Then another appeared. And another. Finally, he threw the phone onto the couch. The action surprised even himself. He rarely lost control. But tonight was different. The pressure he had buried for years was finally breaking through. A few minutes later, someone knocked on the door. Jungkook already knew who it was. He opened it. Jimin stood there. No manager. No staff. No explanation. Just Jimin. You didn't answer my calls. I needed space. The words came out sharper than intended. Jimin's expression changed slightly. Not anger. Pain. But he didn't leave. Space from me. Jungkook immediately regretted it. No. Then what? Jungkook looked away. From everything. The honesty softened the tension. Jimin entered quietly. For a while they sat across from each other. The distance between them felt strange. They had been closer than ever on the island. Now, only a few days later, the world had created a wall between them. Finally, Jimin spoke. Do you regret it? Jungkook looked up. What? The vacation. Silence. A painful silence. Jimin continued. The confession. Another pause. The ring. Jungkook's eyes widened. No. The answer was immediate. Certain. I regret that someone took our moment. His voice lowered. But I don't regret you. The words affected Jimin deeply. Because that was the one answer he needed. Yet something still bothered him. Then why are you acting like you want to disappear? Jungkook looked exhausted. Because I'm scared. Jimin nodded slowly. Of people. No. Of the rumors. No. Then what? Jungkook stared at him. And finally admitted the truth. I'm scared that one day you'll realize this life is too difficult. Jimin froze. What? I know what this means. Jungkook's voice trembled. You didn't ask for this pressure. You didn't ask for everyone to analyze every decision we make. You didn't ask for people to judge something they don't understand. Jimin stood up. His emotions suddenly rising. Do you really think I'm that weak? The question hit hard. Jungkook looked shocked. That isn't what I meant. No, tell me. Jimin's voice became stronger. Do you really think I would stand beside you when everything is easy, but leave when things become difficult? No. Then why are you deciding my limits for me? The room went silent. Jungkook had no answer. Because Jimin was right. Completely right. Jimin's eyes softened, but his voice remained firm. You've spent so much time protecting everyone else. You protect your members. You protect your fans. You protect people around you. But who protects you? The question broke something inside Jungkook. Something he had hidden. Something he refused to admit. His eyes became wet. I don't know. The confession was small, but it carried years of exhaustion. Jimin sat beside him. Closer this time. You don't always have to be strong. Jungkook looked down. I don't know how not to be. I know. Jimin smiled sadly. That's why I'm here. For several minutes they stayed silent. Not an uncomfortable silence. A healing one. Until suddenly Jungkook's phone rang. Unknown number. Both looked at it. Neither wanted to answer. But something about the timing felt wrong. Jungkook picked it up. Hello. No response. Only breathing. Then a voice. A voice that made his entire body freeze. Congratulations. Jungkook's face changed. Jimin immediately noticed. Who is it? The voice continued. You thought the vacation was the secret. A cold feeling spread through the room. What do you want? Jungkook asked. A quiet laugh came from the other side. The world knows about the island. But they don't know the real story. Jimin stood. His expression became serious. What story? The caller continued. The photos were only the beginning. Jungkook's grip tightened around the phone. What are you talking about? You two think someone accidentally found you. A pause. Then the words that changed everything. Someone wanted you to be found. The call ended. Silence returned. But this time it felt different. Dangerous. Jimin looked at Jungkook. The peaceful vacation suddenly felt like the beginning of something much bigger. Someone had planned this. Someone had been watching. And somewhere beyond the noise of the world, a hidden truth was waiting to be revealed. The rain started falling the same night they discovered the truth. Heavy drops crashed against the apartment windows, creating a restless rhythm that matched the chaos inside Jungkook's mind. The mysterious phone call kept replaying over and over. You think someone accidentally found you. Someone wanted you to be found. Those words had become impossible to ignore. Jungkook sat silently on the edge of the sofa, staring at the dark screen of his phone. Jimin stood near the window, watching the city lights blur through the rain. Neither of them had spoken for almost 10 minutes. Finally, Jimin broke the silence. We need to find out who did this. Jungkook looked up. No, the answer came too quickly. Jimin turned. No. Jungkook shook his head. Not like this. Then how? I don't want this to become bigger. Jimin stared at him. Bigger than someone manipulating our lives. Jungkook looked away. The frustration in Jimin's voice was understandable. But Jungkook wasn't only afraid of the person behind it. He was afraid of what would happen if they uncovered the truth. Sometimes secrets were dangerous because of what they hid. But sometimes they were dangerous because of what they revealed. You're avoiding something, Jimin said. The sentence immediately changed the atmosphere. Jungkook's expression hardened slightly. I'm not. You are. Jimin. No. Jimin stepped closer. You know something. Silence. The rain became louder. Jungkook's fingers tightened. A small movement. But Jimin noticed. You knew this could happen. The accusation wasn't angry. It was hurt. And somehow that was worse. Jungkook closed his eyes. For a moment he wished he could rewind everything. Back to the island. Back to the beach. Back to the moment when everything was simple. But life never allowed people to stay in perfect moments forever. I received a message before we left. Jimin froze. What? Jungkook slowly reached for his phone. He opened a hidden folder. A message appeared. Unknown sender. No name. No number. Only a sentence. Enjoy your last peaceful memory. Jimin felt a chill. When did you get this? 2 days before the vacation. The silence that followed felt unbearable. Jimin looked at him. You knew someone was watching. I thought it was a threat. And you still went. Jungkook didn't answer. That was the answer. Jimin took a step back. A mixture of disbelief and pain crossed his face. You risked everything. I wanted one moment. One moment. Jimin's voice rose. You could have told me. I didn't want you to worry. That's not your decision to make. The words echoed through the apartment. Both of them froze. It was the first real argument since the island. The first time emotions exploded. Jungkook looked down. Jimin immediately regretted shouting. But the pain was real. I spent years standing beside you, Jimin said quietly. Through everything. Through pressure. Through fear. Through moments when everyone expected us to be perfect. His voice became softer. But you still think you have to carry everything alone. Jungkook's eyes became emotional. I'm trying to protect you. No, Jimin shook his head. You're trying to protect yourself from losing me. The words hit harder than any accusation. Because they were true. Jungkook had always feared abandonment. Even when people stayed. Even when people proved their loyalty. A small part of him still expected everything beautiful to disappear. His phone suddenly vibrated. Both looked down. Another message. This time with a photo. Jungkook opened it. And both of them went completely silent. It was a picture from the island. Not one of the leaked photos. Something different. Something impossible. It showed them sitting on the beach at night. Jimin holding the ring. Jungkook looking at him. A moment that happened before anyone knew. Before the world knew. Before they even returned home. The caption beneath the photo was simple. You still don't know the whole story. Jimin's face changed. This person was there. Jungkook nodded slowly. Watching us. A cold silence filled the room. The idea was terrifying. Someone hadn't discovered their secret. Someone had followed it. Then another message appeared. A location. And a time. Tomorrow. Midnight. A place they both recognized. Jimin stared at the screen. That place. Jungkook nodded. The old studio. The place where they had spent countless nights practicing. The place filled with memories. The place where their journey had started. Jimin looked at Jungkook. This is a trap. I know. Then why do I feel like we have to go? Jungkook didn't answer. Because he felt it too. Some mysteries couldn't be ignored. Some truths demanded to be faced. The next night the old studio was completely empty. Dust floated through the air. The familiar smell of old wood and equipment filled the room. Every corner carried memories. Hard work. Dreams. Arguments. Laughter. Pain. Growth. Jungkook entered first. Jimin followed. The lights flickered above them. Then suddenly, the door closed behind them. Locked. Jimin immediately turned. What the? A voice came from the speakers. You finally came. They both froze. The voice was distorted. Impossible to identify. Jungkook stepped forward. Who are you? A laugh echoed through the room. You really don't remember. The lights turned on one by one, revealing the walls, covered with photographs. Not just from the island. From years ago. Old moments. Private moments. Moments nobody outside should have known. Jimin's breathing became uneven. This is insane. Jungkook stared. His face slowly changed. Because among the pictures was one image that shocked him. A photo from years ago. A day he had almost forgotten. A day when everything nearly changed. Jimin noticed his expression. What is it? Jungkook couldn't speak. The voice returned. Your biggest secret isn't the vacation. A pause. It's the promise you made long before that. Jimin looked at Jungkook. What promise? Jungkook remained silent. Because suddenly he remembered. A promise from years ago. A promise he never told anyone about. A promise connected to the beginning of everything. The speaker crackled. And the final message appeared on the screen. Now you will finally know why your paths were never an accident. The lights went out. And in the darkness, Jungkook whispered the words that made Jimin's heart stop. I thought that memory was gone forever. Darkness inside the old studio felt different from ordinary darkness. It was not empty. It was filled with memories. Every corner carried pieces of the past. The old mirrors where they practiced until exhaustion. The wooden floor where countless dreams had been built. The walls that had witnessed laughter, frustration, arguments, and moments nobody else knew about. But tonight, those memories felt like they belonged to someone else. Someone was rewriting their history. Jungkook stood frozen in front of the photograph on the wall. His face had lost all color. Jimin noticed immediately. Jungkook. No response. Jungkook, look at me. Slowly, Jungkook turned. His eyes carried something Jimin had never seen before. Fear. Not the fear of rumors. Not the fear of the public. Something deeper. Something older. What happened? Jimin asked. Jungkook stared at the photograph again. His voice came out quietly. This was supposed to be impossible. What is it? Jungkook walked closer. The picture showed two younger versions of them. Years ago. Before everything changed. Before fame became overwhelming. Before the world knew their names. It was taken outside the studio. But that wasn't what shocked him. It was the person standing in the background. Someone they both knew. Someone who should not have been there. Jimin stepped closer. Then he saw it. His breathing stopped. No, the room felt colder. The person in the photo was someone from their past. Someone who disappeared without explanation. Someone they believed had left forever. Jungkook whispered the name. Minkook. The speaker suddenly activated. A distorted voice filled the room. You finally remember. Jimin looked around. Where are you? No answer. Only a quiet laugh. You both spent years believing that your journey was natural. The lights flickered. But someone was getting it. Jungkook's expression darkened. Stop hiding. You always hated secrets, Jungkook. The voice sounded amused. So interesting. Because you created the biggest secret of all. Jimin looked at Jungkook. What does he mean? Jungkook didn't answer. The silence was enough. Jimin's eyes narrowed. You really do know something. Jimin. No. His voice became sharper. Not this time. The frustration that had been building for days finally exploded. You keep telling me you want honesty. You keep saying we should face everything together. But every time something happens, you hide another piece of the story. Jungkook looked hurt. I was trying to protect you. Stop saying that. The words were immediate. Emotional. Protection without honesty is just another way of pushing someone away. The sentence hit Jungkook deeply. Because somewhere inside he knew it was true. The speaker interrupted. Interesting. Both looked up. You two are still fighting about trust. A pause. After everything, Jungkook stepped forward. Show yourself. The old projector suddenly turned on. A video appeared. The screen showed the studio years ago. Young Jungkook, young Jimin, laughing, talking, completely unaware they were being recorded. The footage was grainy, old, private. Then the camera angle changed. Someone behind the camera spoke. A familiar voice. Jimin covered his mouth. Because he recognized it. No way. The younger versions of them were having a conversation. A conversation they had completely forgotten. The recording continued. Young Jungkook sat on the floor, exhausted after practice. Young Jimin handed him a bottle of water. You always push yourself too much. Young Jungkook smiled. I just don't want to lose everything. Young Jimin looked at him seriously. You won't. How do you know? Because people who care about you won't disappear. The present-day Jungkook closed his eyes. The memory came rushing back. That day. That conversation. That promise. But there was something else. Something they never noticed. After the recording ended, a voice appeared. The same voice from the studio. Do you remember what happened after this? The screen changed. A different video appeared. Jungkook and Jimin froze. Because this footage was from the same night. But after they left, someone entered the studio. Minkook. He walked inside carrying a folder. Inside the folder were documents. Photos. Plans. Jimin's face changed. What is that? The voice answered. The beginning. Jungkook stepped closer. What beginning? The reason you two were brought together. Silence. Impossible silence. Jimin shook his head. That doesn't make sense. It does. No. Jimin's voice became angry. You're saying our entire relationship was planned. The speaker remained silent for a moment. Then, not your feelings. A pause. Your opportunity. Jungkook stared at the screen. The words were confusing. Terrifying. The voice continued. Your lives were changed because someone believed you would become something greater together. Jimin laughed bitterly. So this is what, some kind of experiment? No. Then what? A choice. The screen suddenly showed old documents. Names. Dates. Events. Moments from their careers. Things that happened years ago. Things that seemed random. But now looked connected. Jungkook felt his stomach drop. Someone had been watching their journey. Recording their struggles. Predicting their future. Jimin looked at him. Did you know any of this? Jungkook shook his head. No. For the first time, Jimin believed him. Because Jungkook looked genuinely broken. The voice returned. You both deserve the truth. The projector showed one final image. A handwritten letter. Jungkook recognized the handwriting immediately. His own. His face changed. That. Jimin looked at him. You wrote that. Jungkook couldn't breathe. I don't remember. The letter appeared on screen. Only one sentence was visible. If one day the world tries to separate us, remember why we chose each other. Jimin stared. The words felt impossible. Because they sounded exactly like something Jungkook would say. But he had no memory of writing them. The speaker whispered. You forgot because you wanted to forget. Jungkook stepped back. No, you buried the memory. No, because remembering the truth meant facing what happened. Jimin grabbed Jungkook's arm. What happened? The question remained unanswered. Then the studio lights suddenly turned red. An alarm started. A countdown appeared on the screen. 5 minutes. Jimin looked around. What is happening? The voice spoke one final time. Now you have a choice. The countdown continued. Leave the studio and protect the life you built. The numbers dropped. Or stay and discover the truth that could destroy everything. Jungkook looked at Jimin. For a moment neither moved. The old studio. The forgotten promise. The hidden past. Everything they believed about their journey was changing. Jimin squeezed his hand. Not letting go. Whatever happens. His voice trembled. We find the truth together. Jungkook looked at him. And despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, despite the impossible mystery surrounding them, he smiled. Because once again, Jimin had chosen him. The countdown reached its final minute. And behind the locked studio door, a hidden room slowly began opening. A room that had been waiting for years. A room that contained the secret someone had desperately tried to hide. The hidden room opened with a sound that made the entire studio shake. A deep mechanical noise echoed through the walls. Dust fell from the ceiling. The old wooden floor trembled beneath their feet. Jungkook immediately grabbed Jimin's hand. Not because he was afraid of the room. Because he was afraid of what they might discover inside. The door slowly moved aside. Behind it was a small underground space. A room that looked untouched for years. The air smelled like old paper, metal, and forgotten memories. Jimin looked at Jungkook. This was here the whole time. Jungkook shook his head. I've practiced here for years. His voice became quieter. I never knew. They stepped inside. The only light came from a single lamp hanging from the ceiling. The room was filled with boxes. Hundreds of them. Each labeled with dates. Years. Events. Moments from their lives. Jimin picked up one folder. His expression changed immediately. Jungkook. He opened it. Inside were notes. Detailed notes. About their struggles. Their personalities. Their habits. Even small things nobody should know. Someone studied us. Jungkook felt uncomfortable. Not because of the information. Because of how accurate it was. A note described something he did whenever he was nervous. A habit he never told anyone. Another described Jimin's tendency to smile when he was hurt. Jimin stared at the papers. This is not normal. No. Jungkook's voice was cold. This is obsession. Suddenly, an old audio player on the table turned on. Both froze. Static filled the room. Then a familiar voice appeared. Mean you. I knew you would find this. Jimin stepped forward. Where are you? Only silence answered. Then the recording continued. I know you hate me right now. You probably think I betrayed you. Jungkook's expression hardened. You did. The recording continued as if responding. But before you judge me, listen. A pause. I was trying to protect the two people who mattered most. Jimin looked confused. Protect us. The voice continued. You think the world discovered you because of talent alone. You think every opportunity happened by chance. A soft laugh. You were wrong. Jungkook clenched his fist. What is he saying? Jimin looked at him. I don't know. The recording continued. There were people who wanted to control your future. People who saw you as something they could use. The room became silent. The words felt heavier. They wanted perfect images. Perfect stories. Perfect emotions. But they never understood one thing. A pause. They underestimated your bond. Jimin's expression softened slightly. The recording continued. The reason you survived everything was because you were real. Jungkook looked down. For a moment the anger faded. Because despite everything, those words felt true. Then the recording changed. A different voice appeared. A voice neither of them recognized. Cold. Professional. We need to separate them. The sentence immediately changed the atmosphere. Jimin looked up. What? The recording continued. They are becoming too close. They influence each other. They cannot be controlled individually if they remain together. Jungkook felt a chill. Someone had tried to break them apart. The recording played conversations. Plans. Discussions. People talking about their careers. Their public image. Their future. Jimin covered his mouth. This is insane. Jungkook stared at the speakers. How long? The answer came from the recording. Years. The room seemed to shrink. Years of decisions. Years of pressure. Years of feeling something was wrong. Suddenly everything connected. The rumors. The strange timing. The leaked photos. The mysterious messages. Someone had been waiting. But why now? Why reveal everything now? The recording stopped. Then a final file appeared on the screen. A video. Jungkook immediately recognized the location. The island. Their vacation. But the video was recorded before they arrived. Jimin watched silently. The screen showed someone entering the villa. Someone placing cameras. Someone preparing everything. Jimin's face became pale. They were planning this from the beginning. Jungkook nodded. The person in the video turned toward the camera. And for the first time they saw the face. Not Mean Youth. Someone else. Someone unexpected. Someone they trusted. The video froze. Neither of them spoke. Because the person on the screen was someone who had been close to them for years. Someone who knew everything. Someone they never suspected. Jimin whispered. No. Jungkook looked completely shocked. How could they? The speaker activated again. Minu's voice returned. I tried to stop this. I tried to warn you. But I failed. A pause. Because the person you should fear was never outside your circle. The lights suddenly went out. Darkness surrounded them. Then a sound. A door closing. Not the hidden door. Another door. Behind them. Someone else was in the room. Jungkook immediately turned. Who's there? No answer. Only footsteps. Slow. Calm. Coming closer. Jimin stood beside Jungkook. Neither moved. The footsteps stopped. Then a familiar voice spoke from the darkness. You finally found the truth. Jungkook froze. Because he knew that voice. A voice that had comforted him. A voice he trusted. A voice he never imagined would become a threat. The lights flickered back on. And the person standing in front of them smiled. I was wondering how long it would take. Jimin stared. His heart sank. Why? The person looked at both of them. Not angry. Not guilty. Almost sad. Because you two were never supposed to discover this. Jungkook stepped forward. Tell us everything. The person remained silent. Then slowly placed a file on the table. A file with their names. Both names. And one final sentence written across the cover. The truth about the promise you made before you became famous. Jimin looked at Jungkook. Jungkook looked back. Neither understood. But both knew one thing. Their entire story was about to change. Because the biggest secret was not about who had watched them. It was about what they had forgotten. and why someone had worked so hard to make sure they never remembered. The room went completely silent after the truth was revealed. Not the kind of silence that brought peace. The kind of silence that came before everything collapsed. Jungkook stared at the person standing in front of them. The person who had been part of their lives. Someone they trusted. Someone who knew their dreams, their fears, their weaknesses. And now that same person was standing inside a hidden room filled with secrets. Jimin's voice trembled. Why? One word. But it carried years of confusion. The person standing across from them looked away. For the first time, their confidence disappeared. I knew this day would come. Jungkook stepped forward. Answer the question. His voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that appeared when anger was buried too deep. Why did you watch us? Why did you collect all of this? Why did you let someone manipulate our lives? The person took a deep breath. Because I was trying to prevent something worse. Jimin laughed softly. A bitter laugh. Everyone says that. Everyone who hurts people always says they had a reason. The words struck hard. The person looked at Jimin. You think I wanted this? Then explain. Silence. The room waited. Finally, the person walked toward the table and opened the file. Inside were documents. Old contracts. Private reports. Personal notes. But the most shocking thing was not what was written. It was the date. Years before they became who they were. Jungkook picked up a paper. His hands slowly tightened. This. He looked at Jimin. This is from before we even knew what was happening. Jimin grabbed another document. His eyes moved quickly. Then stopped. What does this mean? The person answered quietly. It means someone predicted everything. Jungkook looked confused. Predicted? Yes. They studied patterns. They studied people. They studied you. The room felt colder. Jimin shook his head. No, he refused to accept it. No one can predict people like that. The person looked at him sadly. They didn't predict your feelings. They predicted your struggles. They knew pressure would bring you closer. They knew hardship would create trust. They knew you would become each other's strongest support. Jungkook stared. The words were disturbing. Because some parts felt painfully accurate. The difficult moments. The times they almost gave up. The moments where one of them saved the other without even realizing. Was it all just coincidence? Or had someone been watching from the beginning? Jimin turned toward Jungkook. Did you ever feel like something was wrong? The question surprised him. Jungkook thought carefully. Then slowly nodded. Sometimes. When? After we started becoming successful. Jimin looked at him. Jungkook continued. There were moments where opportunities appeared too perfectly. Problems disappeared too quickly. People always seemed to know what we needed before we said anything. The room became silent again. The person nodded. Because someone was arranging things. Jimin's expression changed. Arranging. Yes. Not everything. But enough. Jungkook's voice became cold. Who? The person didn't answer. Jungkook moved closer. Who has been controlling our lives? The person looked directly into his eyes. And the answer destroyed the last piece of certainty they had. Someone who believed they owned your future. Jimin's face hardened. Who? A pause. Then. Someone close enough to know your dreams. Someone powerful enough to change your path. Someone who thought your happiness was a project. Jungkook felt anger rising. A project. The person nodded. They never saw you as people. They saw a story. A story they wanted to create. Jimin's hands trembled. So the vacation. Yes. The leaked photos. Yes. The messages. Yes. Everything connected. Every strange event. Every suspicious moment. Every question they ignored. It was all part of something bigger. Jungkook looked devastated. Why now? The person looked at the ring on his hand. The ring from the island. Because you made a choice. Jimin frowned. What choice? The person pointed at the ring. You stopped following the story they created. You created your own ending. The words hit them both. The ring suddenly felt heavier. Because it represented something bigger than love. It represented freedom. A choice. A decision to stop living according to someone else's plan. Then the lights suddenly flickered. A phone began ringing. Everyone froze. The sound came from inside the hidden room. The person looked terrified. No, Jungkook noticed. You know who that is. The person didn't answer. The phone kept ringing. Again. 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 Finally, Jimin picked it up. Before he could speak, a voice came through. A voice that made his blood run cold. Hello, Jimin. Jungkook immediately looked at him. Because the caller knew exactly who answered. Jimin stayed silent. The voice continued. I'm disappointed. Jimin gripped the phone tighter. Who are you? A quiet laugh. You really forgot. The room went still. The voice became softer. You promised you would never forget. Jungkook looked at Jimin. What promise? Jimin shook his head. I don't know. But something about his expression said otherwise. The voice continued. You two spent years searching for answers. But you never asked the most important question. A pause. Why did you choose each other? Jungkook felt his heart stop. Because that question was strangely familiar. The voice continued. Not why you love each other. Not why you trust each other. Why did it start? Jimin closed his eyes. A sudden memory flashed. A hallway. A late night. A promise. A conversation he had forgotten. He whispered. I remember. Everyone looked at him. Jungkook's expression changed. What? Jimin opened his eyes. And the fear inside them was unmistakable. I remember the first time we made a promise. Jungkook stared. What promise? Jimin looked at him. His voice barely audible. The promise that if one of us ever forgot. A tear formed in his eyes. The other one would remind them. The phone went silent. Then the voice spoke one final time. Now you remember. The call ended. Nobody moved. Because suddenly the mystery was no longer about someone watching them. It was about something much more dangerous. They had forgotten a promise. A promise they made before fame. Before the world. Before everything. And somewhere in the past, there was a moment that could explain why their lives had always been connected. But remembering it meant facing the one truth they had spent years avoiding. The room felt like it was holding its breath. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The person standing in front of Jungkook and Jimin looked different now. Not like a villain. Not like an enemy. But like someone who had been carrying a terrible secret for far too long. Jungkook stared at the file on the table. His name was written on the cover. Jimin's name was written beside it. Two names. One story. One hidden past. Open it, the person said quietly. Jungkook didn't move. Why should we trust you? The question was sharp. The person looked down. You shouldn't. The answer surprised them. I lost the right to ask for your trust a long time ago. Jimin watched carefully. There was something different in the person's voice. Regret. Real regret. Then tell us the truth. Jimin stepped closer. No more games. No more secrets. The person nodded slowly. Okay. They opened the files. The first page was not a document. It was a letter. Old. Handwritten. Jungkook immediately recognized the handwriting. His own. His breathing stopped. I wrote that. The person nodded. Yes. When? Before everything changed. Jimin looked confused. What does that mean? The person looked at both of them. Before the world knew your names. The room became silent again. Jungkook took the letter. His hands trembled slightly as he read. The words were simple, but they felt powerful. If we ever get lost, remember this moment. Remember why we started. Remember that before the applause, before the expectations, before everyone else had an opinion, we were just two people who promised to stay. Jimin's eyes widened. He felt something inside him shift. A memory. A forgotten feeling. A moment buried under years of noise. I remember. Jungkook looked at him. What? Jimin closed his eyes. Images flashed through his mind. A quiet hallway. Late at night. The sound of rain outside. Two exhausted people sitting on the floor after practice. No cameras. No pressure. Just honesty. We were talking about leaving. Jungkook froze. Leaving. Jimin nodded slowly. We were tired. His voice became emotional. We thought maybe this life wasn't for us. The person across from them watched silently. Because they knew. They knew this memory mattered. Jimin continued. You said you were scared. Jungkook looked at him. What did I say? Jimin looked directly into his eyes. You said. A tear formed. You said you didn't want success if it meant losing yourself. Jungkook became quiet. Because that sounded exactly like him. Then Jimin smiled sadly. And I told you something. What? Jimin whispered. I told you that no matter what happened, I would remind you who you were. The room felt heavier. Because suddenly the mystery wasn't just about manipulation. It was about a promise. A real one. A promise they had made before anyone was watching. The person finally spoke. That promise was the reason they became afraid. Jungkook looked at them. Who? The person hesitated. Then answered. The people who wanted control. They realized something. What? That you two didn't need their plan. You had each other. Jimin shook his head. This is unbelievable. I know. No, you don't understand. His voice became louder. You're telling us that people were controlling our lives, recording us, manipulating events. He pointed at the files. And you expect us to just accept this? The person didn't defend themselves. Yes. The answer made Jimin angry. Why? Because the alternative is worse. Silence. Jungkook narrowed his eyes. What alternative? The person looked at the door. Like they were afraid someone was listening. They don't want you to know. Who? A pause. Then, the people who created this entire system. The lights suddenly flickered. Everyone looked up. A strange sound came from the hallway. Someone was outside. Jungkook immediately moved in front of Jimin. A protective instinct. Jimin noticed. And despite everything happening, that small action reminded him of something. Jungkook always protected people before himself. The door handle slowly moved. Someone was trying to enter. The person in front of them whispered. They found us. The door opened. But nobody was there. Only a small envelope on the floor. Jungkook picked it up. No name. No message. Only one symbol. The same symbol that appeared on the old documents. Jimin looked at it. What is that? The person's face changed. Fear. Real fear. That means the person behind everything knows you found the room. Jungkook opened the envelope. Inside was a photograph. A recent photograph. From that night. The four of them inside the hidden room. Taken only minutes ago. Jimin's heart dropped. They were here. The person nodded. They have been here the entire time. The photograph had a message written on the back. 3 words. Choose carefully. Jungkook stared at it. Then suddenly laughed. Not because it was funny. Because he was exhausted. How many times are we going to let someone else decide our choices? Nobody answered. His voice became stronger. They planned our future. They watched our struggles. They tried to control our story. He looked at Jimin. But they forgot something. Jimin met his eyes. What? Jungkook held up the ring. The same ring from the island. They forgot we already chose. The emotion in the room changed. For the first time they weren't just reacting. They weren't running. They weren't afraid. They were fighting back. Jimin stepped beside him. Together. Like always. The person watching them whispered. You really are impossible to separate. Jimin looked at them. Because we were never held together by someone else's plan. Jungkook nodded. We chose this. The moment was interrupted by a sudden sound from the hidden room. A second door opened. Behind it was another chamber. But this one was different. No files. No photographs. No recordings. Only one object in the center. A small box. Jungkook slowly approached. The room seemed strangely familiar. Like he had been there before. But that was impossible. He opened the box. Inside was a voice recorder. And a note. The handwriting was his. Again. The message was short. Play this when you finally remember. Jimin looked at him. What is on it? Jungkook pressed the button. Static filled the room. Then a younger version of his own voice appeared. A voice from years ago. If you are hearing this. A pause. Something happened. Jungkook froze. The recording continued. And if Jimin is beside you. A shaky breath. Then we failed to protect the memory. Jimin grabbed Jungkook's hand. The voice continued. But maybe that means you finally found the truth. A long silence. Then the younger Jungkook whispered. The person you are searching for is not the person who hurt you. They are the person who saved you. The recording stopped. Everyone stared at each other. Because the biggest mystery had just changed. The question was no longer who betrayed them. The question was, who had been protecting them all this time? And why had they been forced to forget? The voice recorder fell silent. But the words remained. The person you are searching for is not the person who hurt you. They are the person who saved you. Nobody moved. The old studio felt heavier than before. The hidden room. The forgotten memories. The impossible truth. Everything they believed about the past had started breaking apart piece by piece. Jungkook stared at the recorder in his hand. His expression was lost. Because the voice was his. The words were his. But the memory was missing. How can I forget something this important? His voice cracked. Jimin immediately looked at him. Not with suspicion. With concern. Because he could see how much this was hurting him. Jungkook. No. He shook his head. I need to understand. He looked around the room filled with secrets. How many things have I forgotten? The question was painful. Because nobody had an answer. The person standing behind them lowered their gaze. There are things the mind hides when the truth is too difficult. Jungkook turned sharply. Don't talk like you know me. The person accepted the anger. You're right. A pause. I don't know what it felt like to be you. But I know what happened. Jimin stepped forward. Then tell us. The person looked at both of them. Years ago, before your lives became what they are now, there was a decision made. A decision about your future. Jungkook frowned. What decision? To separate you. The words immediately changed the atmosphere. Jimin's expression hardened. Again with this. Yes. The person nodded. They believed your connection was becoming dangerous. Dangerous. Jungkook laughed bitterly. We were just supporting each other. Exactly. The answer was quiet. That was the problem. Silence. People can control someone who is alone. But someone who has a person who reminds them who they are. The person looked at them. Is harder to control. Jimin felt a chill. Because suddenly everything made sense. The pressure. The misunderstandings. The moments where they were pushed apart. The times when they doubted themselves. Maybe it wasn't random. Maybe someone wanted them to doubt. Jungkook walked toward the wall of photographs. He studied every image. Every moment. Every memory. Then he stopped. A photograph caught his attention. It was from years ago. A day he remembered. A day when everything almost ended. He touched the picture. This day. Jimin came closer. What happened? Jungkook stared. I thought you left. Jimin froze. What? Jungkook looked at him. I thought you were going to quit. The memory slowly returned. A painful night. An argument. Exhaustion. Fear. Two people who cared so much they accidentally hurt each other. I remember, Jimin whispered. They both stood there. Remembering. That night. They were younger. Lost. Afraid. Jungkook had been convinced he was holding everyone back. Jimin had been convinced he wasn't needed. They both suffered silently. And then, someone had found them. Someone had talked to them. Someone had stopped them from giving up. Jimin looked at the person in the room. You. The person looked away. You were there. A long silence. Jungkook's eyes widened. You were the one who stopped us. The person nodded. I was. Jimin's voice softened. Why? The person looked emotional for the first time. Because I saw what everyone else ignored. What? That you weren't making each other weaker. You were keeping each other alive. The words hit deeply. Jungkook looked down. For years, he had wondered if his attachment to Jimin was a weakness. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was the reason he survived. Suddenly, another sound came from the room. A phone. Not theirs. An old phone hidden inside the wall. The person immediately turned pale. No. Jungkook noticed. What? That phone should not still work. The ringing continued. Nobody wanted to answer. But everyone knew they had to. Jimin slowly picked it up. Hello. For several seconds there was only silence. Then a voice. A voice that none of them expected. A voice from the past. A voice they thought they would never hear again. Jimin. His face changed. Jungkook immediately noticed. Who is it? Jimin couldn't answer. The voice continued. You finally found it. Jimin whispered. Mean you. The person in the room looked shocked. Because they believed Minyu was gone. The voice laughed softly. I knew you would remember eventually. Jungkook grabbed the phone. Where are you? A pause. Then, somewhere I should have left years ago. Why did you do this? Jungkook's anger returned. Why did you hide everything? The voice became quiet. Because if you knew the truth too early, you would lose everything. Jimin's voice trembled. Explain. The answer came slowly. I wasn't trying to hide your past. I was protecting your future. Nobody spoke. Then Minyu continued. The person you think betrayed you. A pause. They were actually trying to expose the people controlling you. Jungkook looked at the person beside them. The person closed their eyes. Because they knew. Minyu was telling the truth. Jimin whispered. Then why didn't anyone tell us? Because the truth was dangerous. How? Because the people behind this still have power. The room went silent. Then Minyu said something that changed everything. They are not afraid of your relationship. They are afraid of what happens when you stop being afraid. Jungkook felt his chest tighten. Because that was exactly what had changed. On the island, he had stopped hiding. He had chosen. He had finally allowed himself to be happy. And someone had noticed. The phone suddenly made a strange sound. A warning. Then Minyu's voice became urgent. You need to leave. Jimin looked around. Why? Because they know you found the room. The lights immediately went out. Again. But this time there was no surprise. Only danger. A loud crash came from upstairs. Someone had entered the studio. Jungkook grabbed Jimin's hand. The same way he had done before. Only this time they weren't running from fear. They were running toward the truth. The person beside them whispered. There is another exit. Jungkook looked back. Why didn't you tell us before? The person answered quietly. Because I was afraid. Jimin looked at them. Afraid of what? The person stared into the darkness. Afraid that when you remembered everything, you would hate me. Another crash echoed above them. Footsteps. Coming closer. Jungkook looked at Jimin. Jimin looked back. No words were needed. They both understood. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The hidden door opened. Behind it was a narrow underground tunnel. A tunnel that had been built years ago. A tunnel connected to their past. And as they disappeared into the darkness, one final message appeared on the screen behind them. A message that made Jungkook stop. Because it was written in his own handwriting. Do not trust the person who knows your memories. Trust the person who remembers your heart. The tunnel beneath the old studio seemed endless. Every step echoed. Every breath felt heavier. Jungkook walked ahead, still holding Jimin's hand. Not because he was afraid of the darkness. Because after everything they had discovered, he finally understood something. The most terrifying thing was not losing the truth. It was losing the person who had always helped him find himself. Behind them, the sounds from the studio slowly disappeared. The footsteps, the voices, the chaos. Only silence remained. After several minutes, the tunnel opened into a small room hidden beneath the city. A place untouched by time. There was one table, one chair, and one final box. Jimin looked at Jungkook. Another secret. Jungkook gave a tired laugh. I think our lives are made of secrets. For the first time in days, Jimin smiled. A small smile. But real. They approached the box together. Inside was a final letter. No documents. No recordings. No photographs. Just words. Jungkook picked it up. The handwriting was his. But this time he wasn't afraid. He opened it. The letter began. If you are reading this, then you finally stopped running from the past. Jungkook's eyes softened. The letter continued. I know you will wonder why you forgot. You will wonder why you allowed fear to erase memories that mattered. But the truth is simple. You forgot because remembering everything at once would have broken you. Jimin listened quietly. The words continued. There was a moment when everything became too heavy. The expectations, the pressure, the fear of disappointing everyone. And in that moment you made a choice. Jungkook swallowed. What choice? Jimin looked at him. Jungkook continued reading. You chose to keep moving forward. You chose to protect the people around you. But you also made another promise. A pause. One day when you were ready, you would remember that you were never alone. Jimin's eyes filled with emotion. Because suddenly he understood. The truth was never about a secret plan. It was never about someone controlling their lives. The real story was about two people who survived impossible moments by choosing each other again and again. The final line of the letter was simple. Do not search for the person who saved you. Look beside you. Jungkook stopped reading. The room became silent. Then he looked at Jimin. For a moment neither of them spoke. Because there was nothing left to explain. No mystery. No hidden message. No person pulling invisible strings. Only them. Jimin smiled softly. You really wrote that. Jungkook laughed quietly. Apparently. You were dramatic even back then. I learned from you. That is a dangerous confession. They laughed. A real laugh. The kind that had disappeared during the chaos. The kind that reminded them who they were. Weeks later, the world was still talking. People still had questions. People still created stories. But something had changed. Jungkook and Jimin no longer felt trapped by everyone's opinions. They stopped trying to control every misunderstanding. They stopped apologizing for being human. They chose honesty. Not because it was easy. Because it was theirs. The island vacation became a memory. Not because it was perfect. Because it wasn't. It came with fear, pain, confusion, and unexpected truths. But somehow that made it more meaningful. One evening, months later, they returned to the same beach. The same ocean. The same place where everything had started. The sunset painted the sky in gold. The waves moved gently against the shore. Jimin looked at the horizon. Do you think everything happened for a reason? Jungkook stood beside him. For a moment he thought about the past. The secrets, the fear, the things they almost lost. Then he smiled. I don't know. Jimin looked at him. But, Jungkook looked back. But I know what I would choose if I had to do it all again. The ocean wind moved around them. The world continued turning. And this time they weren't afraid of what came next. Because they had finally learned the most important truth. Some stories are not written by destiny. Some stories are not created by plans. Some stories survive because two people continue choosing each other, even when everything tries to pull them apart. And that was their story. Not a story about secrets. Not a story about someone controlling their future. A story about trust. About courage. About finding your way back home. And as the sun disappeared beneath the ocean, they walked forward together. Not knowing exactly what tomorrow would bring. But knowing one thing for certain. Whatever came next, they would face it together.